Hello, everyone. Welcome to Make It Change. Today, I thought I would talk about my personal finance history and how I got started trying to create a budget for myself and get more control over my finances and my life. And for me, it started when I was 28, which I think sounds late, but I think whenever you come to it is good. Some people, aren't there even in their 30s or their 40s or older, and some arrive at it much younger. I think a lot of it has to do with how people grow up. And if you're anything like me, and I think I have a pretty common American experience, money wasn't discussed in the home, and there weren't any good money skills that were on display. Certainly, wealth wasn't discussed. Investments weren't discussed because maybe people didn't even have investment accounts. And so, you grow up and you don't really know how to do, much of anything in terms of money other than earn it, which is usually where the focus is. Certainly in lower income bracket or even middle income bracket, people mostly, focus on earning money and the character qualities that it takes to do that, which are good, good to have and good to understand. So, I wasn't able to do things like really keep track of, my money and understand how to use it to constructively create a better personal finance, better money story for myself, for my life. And so for me, it came to a head. I went all the way through undergrad, you got a bachelor's degree, and never really understood how to handle my finances. And then, after I graduated and moved out of residence halls and, out of local apartments, I was then living on my own with a job and having to figure it out. So it all, I'll say, came to a head, but, of course, it's a progression of events and a realization over time. And I realized that instead of having so much fear about, money and finances and bills and, falling behind in bills, falling behind paying utility bills or not paying a credit card bill on time, and just from not having a positive financial history, wanting to avoid every single aspect of it. So, avoiding bills that came in the mail and that kind of activity. So, even, sitting down to pay bills monthly was just a painful activity because I learned that it was painful and I wasn't really able to think of it any differently. So I, just tried to figure out how on earth could I, learn more about this and stop having so much fear about it. And for me, I had to meet that fear with rage, rage at the situation, rage with myself, um, in order to combat that fear because we have, I think people end up with a lot of emotions tied up and connected to money. I don't think that's a leap at all to say that. And most of those emotions seem to be kind of, around fear, certainly expressing itself as avoidance, where we try to turn away and not talk about money, which is certainly the environment that I grew up in. No one was talking about money and didn't have any good, financial skills on display to learn. So I just read some really simple books. I don't remember what they are because it was so many years ago, but they were just simple books on budgeting and just really entry level books to understand just some basic terminology about finances. And in today's world, it would be entirely different. You could still read whatever those books were. They were good books to read, but you could get the same from, just looking things up on Investopedia. This is a plug, a mention that doesn't mean anything. I'm not getting anything from them or anything like that. Um, but, I find myself even still, going to Investopedia and just kind of looking up and making sure that a thing is what I thought I understood it to be. And so that's what I did. I read some books, just about how to budget because I didn't even have that basic skill. And, that's what I needed to do, was really get a handle on my income and then get a handle on my expenses, just understand what they are. That's the very first step when you begin budgeting. And I'll probably make a how-to video about that, is just to assess and understand where you are. Because maybe, you know, maybe even probably, you're not in as bad a place as you might feel that you are, because what you're feeling is all that fear, connected with money and all of that avoidance. Um, so, first coming to understand, the income versus the expenses, and then, developing, um, a right-sized plan, which is just a budget, figuring out how I could rearrange the expenses. It's never about, shouldn't really be so much about cutting things out, and making yourself uncomfortable, but what is livable, what can be comfortable, and what is it, if there's an expensive item on your budget that you're spending money on, and even you feel like it's a little bit frivolous, what is it that you're getting out of that, and in what way are you getting some kind of positive feeling, positive experience out of that? And how could you have that a different way, or in a different amount, or things like that. So for me, I just had a lot of fear from years, decades, and then also, learning from the decades of parents and grandparents of avoiding thinking about money, talking about money, and getting a handle on it. And so I had to meet that with my own rage at myself in order to, conquer that fear. And, I wouldn't say, push it back as though I got rid of it or anything like that, but I needed to have that, fiery, burning rage in order to meet the fear, so that I could have some ground in which I could learn and begin to, come to understand my financial situation, and, try to better the situation. So I started that when I was 28, and it took probably months. I mean, it feels like it was pretty rapid, but it wasn't. It took hard work and lots of refiguring things out. You know, like I had said, some of the books that I read were just to come to understand some basic terminology, because my understanding of finances was absolutely zero. I didn't even know what a lot of the words meant. And, the words are confusing because there's different words for a similar concept that in a different context uses a different word. So I'll give an example. Um, you know, a phrase that's used often is rate of return, and it's expressed as a percentage. And then, we all I knew, the word interest. Okay, well, that's a percent as well. Those are really similar concepts. They are technically different from each other, but the concept is similar enough that it's confusing that there's two different words used in different contexts. And then even more confusing when, the context might call for using the word interest and the word rate of return, meaning they're technically different things in, the same paragraph or chapter, that you're reading. So, you know, using the rage to combat the fear, to be able to, read these books. And I took notes, as I was reading the books. I tried to use, the good skills that I learned when I was an undergrad, of, good note-taking skills, to, again, kind of combat that fear and just start to cement what it is that I at least think at the moment I understand. And then, going back over it, um, not you know not focusing too much, trying to cover too much too quickly, but digesting what I could at a time. But also, these days, what I would do is I would actually set a schedule that would feel comfortable. My time prioritizing skills weren't as honed as they are now. Back then, they weren't as honed. So I would just kind of, come back to it as I felt like I could digest more. And then I would review my notes and make sure that I really had the right understanding, or that what I was now reading, my understanding of a certain word or concept was consistent with what I had previously understood about that word or that concept. So, just trying to build my understanding. And, a fair amount of it was more advanced than what I needed at the time. And so that was another thing that I had to figure out, was just come to kind of understand the language of the playing field, and then begin to kind of segment out, okay, while I might understand some of these group of concepts, these are really beyond where I am right now. I'll need to understand that later, hopefully. But right now, that doesn't apply to my situation. What I actually need is, kind of this smaller, this context area. And so what I first started to do then was put together a budget, and that is what has led me to where I am now. I'm 2 decades, 20 years past where I started at 28, and there's an interruption in the middle where I went to grad school and I ended up burning my 401k that I established at the time, which seemed like a good decision at the time. And of course, now I look back and I think, oh, yeah, that actually was not maybe such a great decision. But education is always a good decision. Going to grad school, getting a master's degree is pretty much always a good decision. It worked out from an income perspective, so that's always a good thing. All right, well, I think I'll stop this, and I'll say if, this life story, sounds similar to yours, or you can kind of, feel the same thing, that there's, stress and fear around money. Um, then I would say like and subscribe, and, you'll hear more about what it is you can come to understand and how you can begin building, some basic understanding. I think everything starts with a budget. I still, 20 years later, have basically the same budget, the spreadsheet that I created for myself, and I keep it updated. I'm mindful because I have, 2 decades of experience with it. It's not as though I'm keeping an eagle eye on it, but I do review it periodically. I know that I'm living within a pretty tight ballpark of that budget, so it's reliable month to month for me. And everything stems from there because it's the excess. If you're able to have any excess leftover money in your budget, that ends up funding other goals that you end up developing for yourself, other financial goals. All right, well, I hope you, as they say, found value in this, and have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.